Greetings, everyone, and welcome to our fall 2023 backpacking trip. This year, we decided to explore some high mountain lakes in the John Muir Wilderness northwest of Paiute Pass. Since this is the first video that I'll be posting to a streaming service, many of you may be new to our adventures. Each year, we try to take 2 8 or 9 day backpacking trips, usually in the spring and fall. This year, due to the enormous snowpack, it was impossible to take a high altitude trip in the spring. In the future, I'll attempt to continue streaming new videos of future trips, how-tos, and likely the next video will be the top 10 I mean, the top 10 questions we get from non-backpackers. Anyway, let's get back to the trip. Let's start with a map overview of our route to give you a general idea of our plans. Before we get too deep into the weeds, please like and subscribe to this channel. Subscribing to the channel will give you automatic notifications when new videos are posted, and clicking that like button will help others see this content. I really appreciate you helping spread the word on this new channel. Now back to this year's trip, which starts at the North Lake Trailhead near the North Lake Campground at about 9,400 feet. And I'll mark that right here on the map. You can see that's about where the trailhead is near the campground. Unfortunately, the trailhead parking is about a third of a mile away near North Lake itself, which is near the pack station. So the parking area is right here in this zone. So I dropped Andra and Dog off at the trailhead with all of our gear, and they waited in the sub-freezing temperatures for me to walk the third of a mile to get back to the trailhead where we took off. So that's kind of the general starting location. You can also see Highway 168 right here. That's what we took out of Bishop to get to the trailhead. The first day of our trip would be the most challenging. We planned to walk approximately 12 miles up and over Paiute Pass and camp near Hutchinson Meadow. Loaded with 8 days of food and cold weather gear, the heavy packs will be a big factor in how fast we can climb at high altitude. So to take a look at this map here, you can see the trail climbing up past Loch Leven Lake, Paiute Lake, and eventually here's Paiute Pass. Paiute Pass is 11,400 feet. So a couple of thousand feet of climbing from the trailhead, and we're already starting at 9,400. So the air is pretty thin. And then we start down the other side past Summit Lake and Paiute Creek and so forth. And then eventually when you drop down below 10,000 feet, you can have fires, which is way, way down here by the time you get below 10,000 feet. And so considering a trip of this intensity, you really need to stress physical conditioning beforehand. Mountain sickness, aka altitude sickness, can kill you. In our case, not only did we train very hard ourselves, but Dog does also. As I've mentioned before, many people want to take dogs backpacking with them, and it's generally a bad idea. City slicker dogs, usually there's just no way they can do it without making their feet bleed. They're not used to this kind of mileage, and it's not about the physical capability as much as it is their pads aren't used to walking mile after mile after mile, day after day. And so before you consider taking a dog backpacking, you really need to think it through and what you're going to do in case the dog has an injury and first aid and all that kind of stuff. It's serious considerations. So take it seriously if you're considering doing it. But dogs do need substantial conditioning for a trip like this. And then after we set up a base camp, now we were originally planning on setting up our base camp here, but we kind of ran out of steam, and I think we ended up setting up our base camp here after we came over the summit. We are going to do kind of an unusual format, at least for us. We've been doing this for decades, and normally we do a what we call a through hike. We park a car at the entry and exit points, and we continue moving along a route until we reach the other car. And this allows you to cover the maximum terrain without having to re-see the same terrain that you saw when you were coming in. And so that's what we generally prefer. But this trip was kind of an exception. And we decided to make a base camp here. And then we wanted to hike the surrounding lakes on subsequent days. And so one of the lakes we planned to hike to was Honeymoon Lake, which is right here near our base camp, which was only about a 3-mile hike up the switchbacks and back. And then we also wanted to hike up French Canyon, and we wanted to explore some of the lakes in this area. We also kind of wanted to go up to this lake and some of the other ones just to check out the area over the week that we're in here. But anyway, that's the best laid plans of mice and men, and we'll we'll cut the intro short here, and we'll cut in directly to the photos. So with that out of the way, let's take a look at some of our photos from the trip. Here we are at the trailhead just before putting on our packs. We wanted an early start to leave plenty of time to reach our base camp. We rose before sunrise to get breakfast and drive to the trailhead. Dog is not a morning eater, and I practically had to force feed him. I'm indicating the morning temperature, which is currently 30 degrees, a typical temperature this early at 9,000 feet. Once we climb high enough, we leave the forest behind and pop out into the sun. This lets us dump the heavy coats and sweaters. I'm already down to just a paper-thin synthetic shirt, even though I doubt the temps have even reached the 40s. The initial climb is steep, and the effort generates all the heat we need. For those that saw our reconnaissance trip about 45 days ago, this was where the huge snowfield and ice section was located. It is completely gone now. We've almost reached Loch Leven Lake, and again, the enormous snow shelf from last month is gone. We've now reached Loch Leven Lake. To prevent any accidents, Dog's food is sealed in plastic bags, as you never know when he'll feel like he's too hot and needs to take the plunge. Dog's pack is filled with freeze-dried beef patties made by Stella and Chewy's. This keeps his total pack weight just over 5 pounds, as long as the U-boat commander doesn't attempt an unauthorized party. We continue climbing away from Loch Leven Lake and head towards Paiute Lake. Dog's a journey type of guy. He stops to smell the flowers and investigate strange new worlds. He boldly goes where no dog has gone before. We're nearly to Paiute Lake. You can see the top of Paiute Pass there in the distance. As we climb away from Paiute Lake, GF takes a photo back the way we came. Paiute Lake is about 100 feet elevation higher than Loch Leven, which can no longer be seen. Dropping into the canyon in the distance is where the trailhead was. Nearing the top of the pass, we stop for a bite to eat. Just before reaching the top of the pass, there's a snowfield of mostly ice. After a long summer, the snow has melted and refrozen every day and night. The snowfield has melted underneath, making a large hollow area of significant concern. Fortunately, it is not terribly wide, ranging from 60 to 100 feet across. GF takes a picture of the snowfield as she crosses. Deep scalloping makes it easier to maintain traction. Sun melts the ice unevenly. Even something as trivial as the dust on the bottom of your boots slightly changes the surface color. This causes those areas to melt more quickly. The deepest holes are only a foot or so deep at the moment. Standing at the top of the pass, that is Summit Lake in the distance. We have not even reached the halfway point. We need to reach those distant trees and descend a few miles into that distant canyon. After passing Summit Lake, those trees don't seem any closer. The Earth's surface at very high altitudes always reminds me of the moon. Rocks, craters, gray granite, etc. It's common for a dog to walk right on my heels. Years ago, he was walking so close behind that when my foot came up, it closed his jaw, causing him to bite his tongue. I felt horrible. Fortunately, he's a bit more careful now. We saw this helicopter hovering in the distance. Most people hiking this trailhead go to Muriel Lake. We started wondering if someone walked out from that area and fell on the rocks. Muriel Lake is an easy day hike, hence its popularity. Here with GF Super Zoom, you can see someone dangling from the cable. They could be training, but the unpredictable winds near here make me question the sanity of using this spot for training. The vast majority of people that think they are backpackers don't qualify in my books. Something I'll explain further in the upcoming Most Common Questions video. Suffice to say, in 2017, 3,453 people were reported missing in the national parks alone. We generally hike outside national parks in the national forest, an area that dwarfs the national parks many times over, with likely many times the backpacking traffic. How many people disappear in the woods every year is not well known, as no one officially tracks this information. Some of the high mountain lakes up here drain across the trail and down to Paiute Creek. From here, we descend another 5 miles, and as we got tired, the camera remained in the case. When we finally broke below 10,000 feet where we could have fires, we were too tired to continue. A mile or so short of our intended base camp, we dropped our packs, made camp, and fixed dinner. We hiked about 11.2 miles with approximately 2,200 feet of climbing on our way in, mostly above 10,000 feet elevation. So hopefully you'll forgive us for not taking any more pictures after we dropped our packs. The next morning, GF gets the requisite tent photo as I prepare breakfast. On the subject of lost backpackers, if you're interested in backpacking, find someone with solid practical experience to go with before attempting it without a coach. Finding a coach isn't easy, as everyone will tell you they know how. If I had a nickel for every article I've read by a clueless reporter stating that the family member said the, quote, missing hiker, unquote, was super experienced, I'd be a billionaire. The family members usually tell the naive reporter all about what the, quote, unquote, experienced lost hiker was planning, which reads like a what not to do backpacking cookbook. Let me give you a simple example everyone can understand. If I drive 100 miles an hour the wrong way down the freeway 12 times, I have experience. Agreed? But how many of you would hire me to teach your kid to drive? Enough said. I've got the pot boiling for my hot chocolate and GF's mocha. We planned 4 days of pancakes. How did I get this job pushing pancakes anyway? You'll find movie references sprinkled throughout my commentary if you pay close attention. If anyone knows the reference, put it in the comments. Here I am making Dog's breakfast. Those are his freeze-dried dinner patties. He gets 15 to 16 per day. They're 95% beef, organ, and bone with 5% plant matter. Dogs don't need carbohydrates, and most owners feed them like they're goats. Dog obesity and diabetes continues to rise, and 80% of dogs have gum disease, a direct indication of a poor diet by the age of 3. Something to think about. And now, for another movie reference.
Tell them what they're going to be eating, Cookie.
You're not going to get no nouveau, almondine, sauteed, thin crust, bottled water, city slicker food. The food's brown, it's hot, and there's plenty of it.
The best way to keep your pup, not to mention yourself, healthy is exercise. Despite being tired from the Herculean effort yesterday, we headed to Lower Honeymoon Lake. Switching to our day packs, we walked about a half mile downstream to find a wide, safe area to cross Paiute Creek. The mosquitoes came out in force, so I'm wearing a head net. In nature, everything has a cycle. If you learn the cycles, it makes life a whole lot easier. Unfortunately, modern man has forgotten this. The ancients studied the stars, precisely tracked the winter and summer solstices with their architecture, and understood the importance of cycles. Mosquitoes also have a cycle, and I'm not talking about the obvious. They pop out in the spring and die in the fall. Everyone knows that. More on this in a bit. We've arrived at Lower Honeymoon Lake, which is apropos since it's our wedding anniversary. We are camped at 9,950 feet elevation, and Lower Honeymoon Lake sits at about 10,440 feet and is just a few short miles on foot. Next is a couple short videos we shot while we were having lunch there.
Greetings. Well, this is the day 2 of our 8-day backpacking trip. A lot of mosquitoes, which normally they're dead in September, but since everything started late this year due to the heavy snowpack, the mosquitoes are late too. Today is our anniversary, depending on how you count. If you count like Andra, it's our 24th wedding anniversary. And what better place to go than Honeymoon Lake? So we hiked up from our camp to Honeymoon Lake, and we're going to have a little bit of lunch here, and then we will head back. So hopefully you enjoy the scenery, and we will catch you in the next clip.
Our motorboat. You know he's going to come back and he's going to shake. Here he comes.
All right, good job, buddies.
He's so fast.
Way to save those drowning sticks. Good swimmer for 10,000 plus. Oh!
Now heading back to camp, which is nestled down in the bottom of that valley, I take in the views from our mountain perch before descending. So mosquitoes, what cycle was I talking about? I was referring to their activity cycle. This cycle varies with the time of year, location, etc. Each area and point in time has a defined cycle. It takes about a day or so to determine this important cycle after we arrived. The trail descends rapidly down the mountain, but back to the mosquito cycle. We quickly determined that there are 0 mosquitoes until about 8:50 a.m. in the morning. They're inactive or asleep. In the evening, they vanish around 8 p.m. This knowledge makes it much easier to avoid them from getting into the tent. Simply do not enter the tent until after 8 p.m. and to enjoy a hassle-free breakfast, be done before they return. Oh, and there's one other thing you do in the woods on a multi-day backpacking trip that's a hell of a lot nicer if you do it without being swarmed with bugs. You probably know what I mean. Perhaps now you understand exactly how important it is to figure out what this cycle is for your particular area. The next morning we rise before the mosquitoes and I prepare another round of pancakes. Or was that pancakes? Anyway, the pot is boiling water for our morning beverages, and you're probably noted that now I don't have a stove. I hate cooking on backpacking stoves, as cooking on a fire is much easier. I can go years without carrying a stove. In fact, I've gone 6+ years between carrying backpacking stoves on a backpacking trip. When we are forced to camp some nights above fireline, I'll bring a stove for those nights only. Dog hates fire smoke, so he rarely sits near the fire, but on cold mornings, he makes an exception. I believe my thermometer read 27 degrees at 7:30 a.m. Nights were in the 20s with daily highs in the 50s and 60s, perfect temps for hiking. I heat up some oil for our apple pancakes while GF brews some coffee. GF enjoys her mocha while I produce the perfect pancake. After breakfast, it's time for Mike and Beth's requested push-ups at 10,000 feet.
Go. 1, 2, 3. Oh, dog, you're making better doors than a window. Nothing gets you warm like some morning calisthenics. With dog licking you on the face. Warming you up, BF?
Yeah. You know, it's a little thinner up here at 10K, but it definitely warms you up. Huh, buddies? Morning calisthenics. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
After breakfast, we decided to take a lazy day and just stay around camp. We figure we can get a game of chess in and rest our legs for tomorrow's big hike. Unfortunately, the mosquitoes are relentless after 9 a.m. and I decided to go sit in the creek. A light wind can do miracles to chase away mosquitoes. On trips decades ago, I even sat at the base of waterfalls to use the natural air currents to keep them at bay. The creek flow is not quite fast enough for the full effect, but I boulder hop out there to thin the herd. Here you can see 5 mosquitoes trying to penetrate my sweater. This synthetic sweater is just thick enough to prevent their bites. GF does her best to capture man and his best friend. Old Yoda ears just doesn't know what she's doing down there. Paiute Creek splits several times through these boulders near our camp. There's a substantial amount of flow out of the frame on the right. Playing chess under attack makes you feel a bit like Jan Nepomucci, but we managed. I've also paid homage to the internet's chess coach hidden somewhere in this photo. Do you see him? If you know who he is, put it in the comments. The emerald pool in the distance was about 4 feet deep. It would make a nice swimming hole if the temps were a bit warmer and the water wasn't fresh snowmelt. Despite all our efforts, the insects drove us nuts all day, and we tried everything to relax. Finally, with the bugs asleep, we headed for the tent. Dog is sporting his jacket and new snood. The snood makes him look a lot like a Russian babushka. For those non-Russian speaking folks, no, it's not pronounced babushka. You're putting the emphasis on the wrong syllable. Babushka means grandmother in Russian. Since we often have nighttime lows in the single digits during our trips, I thought this new snood would help keep his ears warm. The next day, we headed out for our longest planned hike of the trip. Our nearly 16-mile journey will take us up over 11,000 feet again to explore some high mountain lakes. As we go down valley, we intersect with the creek coming down French Canyon. The creek splits more than a half a dozen times, making us cross it repeatedly as we approach the canyon trail. The trail crossing doesn't look like a lot of fun, so I scan upstream for a better location. Spotting a narrow area we can hop across, I head up that direction. It's hysterical how Dog launches himself across to avoid getting his feet wet. If I walk through the water, so will he, but if I avoid getting my feet wet, he follows suit. He's been following and imitating me since he was just weeks old. I guess old habits die hard. This is GF crossing the next branch of the creek as we continue to work our way to the French Canyon Trail split. We reach the trail intersection and GF insists on photographing the signs. Since you can't read them, it says Gilligan's Island to the right and Gullible Island to the north. As we started up French Canyon, the walls were so steep to the east, the mountaintop completely blocked the sun. Here I take a picture of GF taking a picture of Elvis. Sorry, millennials, you won't get that one because the woke nutjobs deleted all the good cartoons from existence before you were born. Having climbed steeply away from Paiute Canyon, we have pushed back into the sun and continue toward Pine Creek Pass. Andra continues to capture our progress up French Canyon. If someone stops for any reason, Dog always shows concern. Is it his breed traits that tell him to protect the family, or is it his herding traits to keep the group together? I guess we'll never know for sure. I pause to make sure Dog has a chance to drink if he so chooses. This still photo doesn't catch the hysterical dance of Dog walking around in the stream, then carefully noting how I will cross without getting my boots wet so he can mimic my route. As we approach the end of the valley and close in on Pine Creek Pass, the trees shorten in the thin air. Across to the west is another towering giant of granite. You see these huge granite stones the size of a car and you think they are so big until you contemplate the weight of this granite formation. The Sierra Nevada mountain range is growing at a relatively fast pace, geologically speaking. Estimates using satellites show the range rising more than 1 millimeter per year. The short trees are all leaning to the right. This is the impact of the enormous spring snowpack sliding from uphill downward. Looking back the way we came, down in that depression was the intersection between Paiute Canyon and French Canyon. This is a better look at the low point as well as another huge granite mass rising out of the valley. To the west, we spot this cascade coming down the side. Small melting snow patches above are feeding the flow down into French Canyon. We've reached the turnoff for Elba and Little Lakes. You can read this one, so I guess I don't get to use creative license and make something up. This is a good look at that cascade in the mountain. We crossed the water from this runoff flowing across our paths miles ago. We are now climbing out of French Canyon towards Elba Lake. This view back into the canyon shows the notch through the mountains referred to as Pine Creek Pass. Another look back down French Canyon towards Paiute Canyon intersection. Broken trees are everywhere, a remnant of the heavy snowpack. We have some photos later showing the destructive impact of the heavy snow year. Our first look at Elba Lake. Elba Lake sits at nearly 11,000 foot elevation. We planned to stay on the trail as we continued, but Dog spotted the lake and had other ideas. As he beelined over, stopped, looked back, continued, stopped, looked back. We slow humans eventually got the hint and followed him over. This is his vacation too. He wanted to see the lake. Who could blame him? The lake was a great place to stop for lunch and relax. I was determined to stay dry, so no sticks were flung into the lake today. Elba Lake has a few rock islands, and you can easily see shallow areas where the submerged granite is only a foot or so below the surface. As we continued along, some wiseacre may have suggested that this pond was Moon Lake. His name is being withheld to protect the innocent. Now this is Moon Lake. The pyramid in the background is of course where the aliens landed and built the Stargate. Moon Lake appears significantly deeper than Elba and sits at just over 11,000 foot elevation. As we continue to the final lake, here is a look back at Moon Lake. Remember I mentioned cycles that no one pays any attention to in modern society? Well, here again, when backpacking, there are cycles that are critically important. In fact, we ran into two novice backpackers on 2 different days, completely oblivious to another critical cycle. That cycle has a 24-hour period. Perhaps you've heard of this one. Yes, you must be aware of sunrise and sunset times. In order to avoid dangerously hiking in the dark, we have expended nearly all the daylight we can afford before turning back. This is Little Lake, where Little John learned to use a staff. Well, at least that's what my friend Robin Hood told me anyway. I take a look around from our final 11,120 foot perch before we head back, and GF took this 360-degree movie to give you the same view. Well, here we go. That's Moon Lake, and looking down towards Paiute Canyon. And then that big granite slab is where the cascade was coming down. In the distance there, that would be Pine Creek Pass. These jagged Sawtooth Mountains to the north. And finally, Little Lake, which is very little. And then the pyramid. Heading back towards Moon Lake, we're not just racing the sun. I want to get back in time with enough warm sunlight to take a shower. As I said, this was a nearly 17-mile hike with over 2,000 feet of elevation gain, and I'm looking forward to an evening shower. That said, GF notices me pulling off the trail. Out comes the first aid kit. I've noticed a problem on one foot. Foot care is critical for long trips with lots of mileage. Never ignore your feet. A hot spot can heal in as little as 24 hours. A blister takes up to 2 weeks. Yeah, don't ignore your feet. Preventative care is critically important. Dog takes a load off and enjoys the view while I make a few foot adjustments. Dog again keeps his feet dry because, well, Papa did it. Back to the French Canyon Trail, GF photographs the signpost. Hutchinson Meadow, that's us. As we head back, we just have to keep up a reasonable pace to reach camp early enough to get a shower in before the temperatures drop. This creek runs the full length of French Canyon, with drainages coming in from the mountainsides crossing our paths along the way. We took pictures to show you the damage the huge snowpack did to this area. Now, it isn't normal to go into a beautiful area and take pictures of crushed trees the whole time, so this video slideshow can give you a a biased view of the area. That said, the amount of damage throughout this area was extensive. Here, GF stands in the middle of the trail. The small trail indentation channeled spring runoff, and that runoff tore the trail into a deep canal. Here you can see just how much material was washed away during the spring. Some of these channels were well over 3 feet deep. Here a large tree has been crushed over. This is a common scene throughout the area. Anywhere where there's a slope, the huge snowpack shifts and flows downhill. This is how glaciers move and flow. Glaciers are just years of snow. In fact, one definition of a glacier is any snow patch that persists from one year into the next. Imagine 20 to 30 feet of snow slowly shifting down slope, and you can understand what happened to this tree. Once we reach Paiute Canyon, we must cross the creek multiple times as it fragments into a half a dozen channels. Today, after we showered, we get to discussing the extreme mosquito situation and how it's impacting Dog. We make the unusual decision to cut this 8-day trip short and leave the following morning. In order to beat the mosquito rise time, we get up just before sunrise and start breakfast and camp breakdown. It is so cold when we get up, I left Dog's jacket on. You can see Sleepyhead here as I get our breakfast fire going. The night before was very cold, and unfortunately now the moisture from our breath is now frozen on the inside roof of the tent. We plan to leave the tent up until the last minute, and with the hope that it'll melt and we can remove some of the water before packing it up. Once breakfast is consumed, we can pack and organize everything else. The area we are camped in is a gigantic granite slab. Some areas are covered in dirt and some are not. The granite is extremely cold at this time in the morning. If you were to lay against it or walk on it with your bare feet, it would suck the heat right out of you. You can see Dog has found an area with dirt to help insulate him from this effect. Packed up, we head out before the mosquitoes appear. We have more than 11 miles to reach the car. The weather forecast before we left showed a 20% chance of snow Saturday and Sunday, and Monday, our planned exit day, was too far out for a forecast. After yesterday's long exploration, we are not sure if we have the energy to exit in one day. But since it is currently Friday and there's a possibility of snow the following day, camping at over 11,000 feet at the pass doesn't seem appealing either. Climbing is extremely energy intensive, and our hope is that we'll find a second wind when we start down the other side of the pass. At this point, unknown to us, the weather forecast has changed since we entered the wilderness. They are now predicting heavy snow and single-digit temperatures for both Saturday and Sunday. In hindsight, this forecast was equally wrong as the first. The area ended up getting heavy snow all the way through Monday. I could rant on here about why so many people go missing or die in the woods every year, but suffice to say, most novice backpackers pack for the weather they expect. We pack for unexpected weather, and while many a dead backpacker laugh at our pack sizes, we're still alive after decades of backpacking and more than 20,000 trail miles. As we climb out of the valley, the ground turns from dirt to rock, but the views from up here are incredible. Most folks could learn a lot from Dog. He's a smeller of the flowers and an enjoyer of the journey through and through. He could care less about our destination. Home is sleeping next to his family, period, full stop. As we get higher, it turns more into a granite rock scramble than a trail. We leave the shade and taller trees behind and enter the windswept mountaintops near the pass. It won't be long before we can see the top of Paiute Pass and the approach to Summit Lake. The blue skies have me wondering about tomorrow's weather. I know many modern backpackers carry satellite communications devices these days, allowing them to constantly text family or friends. This constant communication to the world subverts one of the benefits of backpacking. You may think having instant availability of information is some grand benefit, but I disagree. The mystery of not knowing cannot be underestimated. It provides a sense of wonder and promotes a level of preparedness for the unexpected. This also shines a light on the lie that you somehow know everything and that you're in control of everything, when in reality you know very little and control even less. We've completely climbed out of the forested valley and now plod across the barren moonscape near the pass. There to the left of center is Paiute Pass. Once we reach the top, the required energy to continue will drop substantially and we'll begin to run into day hikers walking up to Loch Leven and Paiute Lakes. I stop to take a picture while Dog takes in the sights. Summit Lake in the rearview mirror. Deep in that forested crack far off in the distance was our base camp. Having crested the top of the pass, we must now traverse the snow and ice field. The scalloping is much more pronounced than when we crossed some days ago. Some of the holes are nearly 4 feet deep. Dog wastes no time to rush out onto the field. Intentionally slipping and sliding down every slope, he works to do exactly what we hope not to do. Even the slightest discoloration causes snow to melt faster in that area. The deepest holes are where hikers have been walking and the dirt from their boots is rubbed off on the snow. Before trying my luck on the ice, I take a picture down towards Paiute and Loch Leven lakes. The ice patches hide a dangerous secret that can only be seen when approaching from the other direction. The snow and ice are melting from underneath. This creates a large cavity under the ice. In fact, there was a large section I had noticed when we arrived a week ago that had collapsed. Falling through the ice could cause a serious injury from this direction as I can't see where the largest cavity is nor assess the thickness of the ice. At the beginning, I think Andra's actually following behind me, and so it looks like I'm talking to myself. Dog gets a little rambunctious when he's playing on the snow, and just watching him makes me nervous. I'm walking just to the left of the deepest scallops, and that way, in the event that I slip and start to slide downhill, but you can't see the steep slope to my right really, that way I'll slide into the scallops and I can stop and then get back up and continue. Right there, I realized I was talking to myself. I know right about here I'm standing on a void that is underneath the ice below me. So I'm taking it slow and I'm approaching the edge of the ice.
There's an ice bridge over there, which you can fall through. So we're trying to make sure we don't go across it, or at least not go through the part that's really thin. But from this angle, you can't see it.
Hunter's coming across the deep scallops. Some of them are 4 feet deep. And when you get to the end, you can see this is a ice shelf. There's 3 feet of clearance under there. So you gotta be careful, as the ice can snap. So, not sure if she's following exactly the way I went, but I took a route that was just uphill from the deepest scallops from what other people had been walking, where it's not practical to walk anymore. And that way, if you slide, you're going to slide into the deep scallops rather than going downhill. And then you can just keep going. When she gets over here, she's going to have to cut across towards me. Same thing I tell people when they drive in the snow, which nobody ever listens to, is that momentum is not your friend. Four-wheel drive does not help you corner or brake. It only helps you get going. The best way to stay safe is have no momentum. So just keep following this right here, follow the dirt, and then get down on your ass and just slide off. I snapped all the weak stuff off, so you should be okay. And now just get down on your ass and slide your legs off. Alright, done and done. 2 jet skis.
Here's another look at the large gap under the ice. Just to my right, out of frame, is a huge area that had collapsed. You might wonder why I didn't go that way and walk on the collapsed section. That would make sense, as it could only collapse once, but unfortunately the abrupt edge was more than 5 feet tall, and that made it too difficult to attempt. I'm big and heavy, heavier still with an enormous pack, but after dropping off this edge, I kicked the edge repeatedly and could not break any additional ice here. Once you realize how strong the ice is against my weight and kicks, you can start to understand why GF had no chance of fracturing the edge. After a few more hours of hiking, we dropped down into the forest and are already approaching the campground. We've reached a grove of aspen trees. If you are a regular follower of our adventures, what does that mean? Yep, that's right, water sources. We've entered an area of creeks, 2 of which we need to cross. Well, this brings us to the close of our little truncated adventure. I asked Andra to shoot the narrow road that takes you up to North Lake so you can just get an idea of what it looks like. But I hope you enjoyed the pictures, and I hope you come back to look at future videos and how-tos that I'll try and add to this site. So Enjoy the rest of this video, and I'll see you in the next one.
Alrighty. We should be able to squeeze by. Okay. Oh, there it is, down there. Did you see it? It's kind of in the shade, but the camera might pick it up. Kind of a bad road to lose your brakes, eh?
Yes.
Like if you took it to a shop and they didn't put the caliper bolts back in.
I would not do that. It's really pretty that the fall colors have started.